Hello and welcome everyone. I've got a cool little project today. First time that I've ever done anything with a bowl. It is a really small bowl too. It holds less than a gallon and a bit less than 4 litres. As you can see, it is clearly the perfect size for either a betta fish or a goldfish. Of course not, it's not even big enough for shrimp. It'll be lucky if it gets a couple of snails in there. So what I want to include in the bowl is a little aquascape in there, just a small one, but the main focus is going to be lots of lovely plants growing out of the top, and hopefully it'll look beautiful, and it'll require very little maintenance, and it'll be a nice little planty ornament aquarium that mainly focuses on the plants, and it'll be a nice little addition that you can put in your house. You can put it anywhere because it's so small. So to kick things off, we'll start with the substrate, and for the bottom layer, I'll be using this reused aqua soil from one of my previous setups, and this should provide lots of nutrients for the plants. For an extra boost, I'll chuck in a couple of root tabs too. And on top will go some sand. The sand that I'm using is just play pit sand, as it's a nice cheap alternative to aquarium sand. Next up is the hardscape, and I want to keep this super nice and simple, so I'm only going to be using some rocks, and the rocks I've gone with is this dragon stone, and again it's reused from an old setup, so it does already have some little bits of moss on, so hopefully that might grow despite being dried up for a good few weeks now. So for the composition, we're following along with the theme of simplicity, so we're going with this nice big rock in the middle and a few extra little ones around the edges for a bit of added detail. So that was nice and straightforward, extremely simple, but I'd like to think it's quite effective. So with that looking good, it's time to move on to the planting. So I'm going to go very light on the planting because the main focus is going to be the plants coming out top. So I just have a few little sprigs of this hygrophila, and then also a few tiny little bits of, 2 little bits of anubias, which are really nice. The anubias fits comfortably between the rocks, and then the stems can go in the substrate. So that's it for the inside of the bowl. I really like how it currently looks, and I'd like to think that anyone and everyone could replicate something like this. The materials are cheap and easy to get hold of, and the setup is straightforward with lots of room for getting a bit more creative and including more detail if you desire. I'm filling the bowl with a mixture of tank water from my established aquariums, but don't worry, tap water will do the job too, and I'm just using a little bit of kitchen roll to prevent the substrate from mixing into the water. But look, that actually don't look half bad. Looks pretty cool. It's nice and simple. Put a tiny bit of salvinia in. Put those 2 in there. Oh, wow, that looks cool. That looks really nice. The scape's fallen over, so it's really not how I intended it to look. But it doesn't look half bad, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so here is this little cool piece of lei that I saw, and as you can see, it's only £3, which I thought, bargain, why not? I'm going to check this out, and hopefully we're going to be able to have it coming out of the top of there, and it should look really cool. So to prep the lily, first remove the pot and take a moment to appreciate its magnificent roots. Now it's time to get your hands dirty and manually remove as much soil as you can. Rinse off the remaining bits of dirt to get the roots as clean as possible. They look absolutely lush, and that one pot was made up by many individual little plants. So to add the peace lily, I've just submerged the roots and the bottom part of the stem, and I'm not using anything to really hold it in place, it's just wedged behind that big piece of dragonstone. The roots are partially visible from the front, but I quite like that. I think it looks much more natural and adds to the aesthetic. To ensure that there are enough nutrients within the water for the roots, I'm adding a little bit of aquarium plant fertiliser. Beautiful. I could easily call it a day here. However, there is one more plant I have in mind which would blend in nicely. This is my largest and oldest aquarium. It's a little over 3 years old and it's a complete mess. But look at how well the immersed plants are doing. They look absolutely fantastic. The broad leaves are Monstera and then the long viney plants are Pothos. Let's take a cutting of the Pothos for the bowl, as well as this little bit of guppy grass and moss. These tiny little root nubs are called nodes, and they will grow into full long roots when in the water. The Pothos adds an extra little bit of colour and texture and an overgrown feel to the bowl, which in my eyes completes it perfectly. I'm not using a light for this, and instead will rely on the ambient sunlight. It is winter here, so I expect growth to be slow initially, but hopefully it'll ramp up as we get closer to summer. I'd recommend to change about half of the water every 1 to 2 weeks, but luckily due to its small volume it's very quick to do. 2 weeks after the initial setup, for a final touch, I added in a few little bladder snails. I had a lot of fun creating this little bowl and I'm really keen to see how it progresses. If you did enjoy the video, I highly recommend having a go at creating something similar. Even if you've never kept plants or aquariums before, it is a fantastic place to start. And if you are deep into the hobby, there's so much room for you to go crazy with it and create something much more intricate and detailed than I have. But thank you so much for watching, I do really appreciate it. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and I'll see you later, fish friends.